I want to ask you, Dev, if you were to look back 3 to 5 years from now and say that this coaching conversation with me today changed everything for you, what would need to happen?
I guess biggest now is since April, and there's some question types I'm still continually missing, like paradox questions I have with the disagreement, and sufficient assumption questions. Getting better in the reading comprehension, which has been I practice consistently and still miss those questions. So those are the biggest things, I think. Improving that LSAT score so I can get into a decent or good law school.
Okay, good to know. So there are certain particular logical reasoning question types that are still giving you trouble. Now, let me ask you this. Have you done these questions by type? Have you drilled dozens of them in a row to try and see the patterns?
I have, and I get them when it comes to drilling. I usually miss the first few and then get like most of them correctly. But when it's randomized, as exams are, that's where the issue comes in.
Okay.
Because of the timing.
Right, right.
Accuracy-wise, if I had unlimited time, I would get them. But it's the harder questions on the end of the spectrum that give me the trouble because of the timing component.
Sure. Okay, good to know. Now, how many timed individual sections have you done?
Probably as of now, like at least over 100.
100 timed sections?
Yes.
Well, that's great to hear.
Timed logical reasoning sections, right? We're talking about, yes.
Yeah, okay. And what does your review process currently look like?
So it depends if I do the section or the whole exam. So I don't look at the answer choices till individually. I go through all the questions. Then I switch answers based on if I think the other answer is better when I'm reviewing it. And then I reread it a couple of times. I make notes with the stimulus that I got the right conclusion, etc. And after I critically think through everything and use process of elimination, conditional reasoning, then I check all the answers to the questions.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, what do you do in terms of articulating your thought process? Do you write things down? Do you talk them out with somebody?
When I'm reviewing it, I usually only talk like within myself. So I'm like, this is wrong because it has nothing to do with the stimulus or the conclusion. This is wrong because it's the wrong type of flaw. Like, I'm talking it out with myself mostly. Okay.
And how long does that take you per question?
After the blind, like while the blind review, it depends on the difficulty level of the question. For hard questions, it can be 15, 20 minutes. For easy questions, it can be a minute. It depends on the difficulty of that question.
Okay.
How much I'm struggling.
That's good to have the background. Now, 15 minutes is great. That's just that you're going deep into your analysis. But you said for easy questions, a minute. Now, if it was truly easy for you personally, you would have gotten it right, yeah? So although it might be a level 1 or level 2 question, there was something about that question that you missed personally. And that just means that there are a variety of tricks the LSAT tests, and you're not falling for all of them, of course, because you're getting many questions right. But for the ones that you get wrong, even if they're easy, there was some unique trick in that question that you personally, Dev, were uniquely prone to. And so when you say talking it out in your head to yourself, that's not talking. That's not articulating. And that's what most people do, obviously. It's not like we have a study buddy going around with us 24/7, and we're not usually writing things out because that takes time and might seem unnecessary. But actually forcing yourself to articulate it will lead you to analyze on a deeper level. Kind of like if you've ever talked things out with a friend, have you ever noticed that your understanding changes as you talk?
Oh, yes, much more so. So it's funny you mentioned that. So I have been using more of like the method that Ellen put in her book to like with old sections to go over the stimulus completely. So the questions I miss, before even like reviewing it, sometimes I do write out like a self summary of those, the stimulus itself, to make sure I understand it.
Good, exactly. That's the kind of articulation I'm looking for, where you paraphrase your thought process, put your understanding of the stimulus in your own words. And then furthermore, even for these quote unquote easy questions that you're getting wrong, what exactly was the reason you got it wrong? Because if it's easy and you got it wrong, to me, that's like doubly bad. Because at least if it was hard, we'd have a good reason why. Now, obviously, people don't only get level 5 and level 4 questions wrong. People will get the random easy one wrong here or there for a variety of reasons. But to me, those are the lowest hanging fruit. If you're going to get down, let's say you want a 170 or above, that means you're getting about 3 wrong on each of the logical reasoning sections. And there's enough tough questions out there that you can't afford to also get an easy one wrong as well. And so for those, I would spend maybe just as much time, if not more time, on those, because there's less reason for you to ever get them wrong. And there's also fewer reasons why you would get them wrong in the first place. Like a level 5 question may have 5 different things about it that make it difficult. And if you fall for any one of those 5 traps, you're going to get it wrong, even if you understood the other 4 traps and avoided those. But for the easy one, there's only one trick. Figure out what that trick was, where it was buried, and if it wasn't so buried, what led you to miss the relatively more obvious trick there, so you can avoid it in the future. And it could be something as simple as the conclusion being in the middle of the stimulus, or improperly translating the word unless, or not seeing a conditional indicator word, whatever it may be.
Okay.
Now, what else would be useful for you right now, Dev? I know we only have a few minutes left.
Any tips on the reading comprehension? Because I've seen that practicing logical reasoning has enhanced my reading skills, but a big chunk of questions I miss on reading comprehension, 67, which to me is way too many. Like, I want to get it down to maybe 2 at most, but I don't know if it's because the passages are long, the time component, or the skill set. For me, that has been the hardest section to review. And I've been doing reading comprehension on a consistent basis, and it's consistently missing the same amount of questions as well.
Okay, now with these reading comprehension questions you get wrong, how are they distributed? Are they within one passage, or are they kind of throughout?
They're usually the harder passages. The easier passages, I'm near perfect in.
Okay, well, it's great that you're near perfect on the easier ones. For the harder ones, I would be looking to see your time allocation. Maybe you could get through the easier passages more quickly, so you have more time for the tougher passage that deserves it. The other thing that this suggests to me that's a possible issue is that maybe you're solving the easier passages just through your raw aptitude, and maybe you need a more systematic method that you could apply to the tougher passages. Usually what happens on the LSAT overall is that people will get easy things right just through their abilities. But on the tougher questions, you need a strategy, you need a plan of attack, because aptitude alone won't get you there. They're just too complex, too difficult. So that's one thing I would be thinking about, is what is your strategy? Do you have a regimented, systematic way of approaching each passage? What is your current process?
I guess the current process of going through a passage.
Yeah.
So during the exam, I would read the passage. The details I need to scope in, I would usually underline or highlight, and then I would stop after each paragraph to give myself like a summary in my head, and then I would continue and see how the following passage is linked to the previous passage, and if it's linked to another one before that, and then I would continue to the questions pretty much when I'm done with that passage.
Okay, so you're looking for the organization of the passage, essentially.
Yeah.
And you're putting things within context.
Yes.
That all sounds good to me because, of course, you do want to be reading for structure rather than for the details. And that would remain what I would recommend for harder passages as well. So I don't think we have enough time to get into all the nuances of reading comprehension just in a couple of minutes. But one thing I do want to suggest for you as well is to think about how you might adapt for the digital LSAT specifically. Are you reading on screen? What are you doing in terms of your digital reading comp practice specifically?
So I do read on the screen through my iPad and just utilize the tools. Because the LSAT now gives like a whole note, like pretty much a lot of white paper, I do sometimes tend to take notes while I'm reading, if it helps me on the harder passages. So those are the two things I do.
Excellent. Yeah, note-taking is definitely a good thing to do. I want to recommend a couple of tools for you as well to improve your reading speed on screen. One of them is called phrasereader.com. The other is called spereader.com. And I can send you links to these if you want to pursue them in the future. Basically, what they do is they let you copy paste text into a field and display it to yourself at different speeds. So you can gradually increase your reading speed on screen specifically, which I think is really important because we're not used to reading dense text on screen. And I know that you're doing a little bit of this practice already, but I think the idea of putting yourself on a treadmill of sorts to help you boost it up will really help a lot.
Sure. And I guess the last point I want to make is, so I started studying in mid-April. I did take the June LSAT, but I knew I was going to cancel that immediately. And before I took it, I was scoring in the mid 150s to like 153 to 157. Recently, my score jumped to about 163, 164. And it's funny, it wasn't a gradual jump, it just increased. And then it consistently increased to a 163, 164. I know, like, for a lot of test users who are where I am, they say that once the mid 160 jump to the low 170s is one of the hardest jumps to like make. So what is your suggestion? Like, I know you weren't like at that point when you're gradually developing, to sort of speed it up, like process, so I don't make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, of course. It is harder to improve more significantly as you get into the higher score bands because you're dealing with the toughest questions at this point. You've already gotten the lowest hanging fruit. So I would suggest for you, learn everything you can about this exam, learn about the way in which it's constructed, and do what you can, especially through your review process, to see the test from the test maker's perspective, how they go about constructing tempting wrong answers and discouraging right answers and dissecting complex stimuli as well. You have to get away from the topic as much as possible and see the underlying mechanisms of the exam, what separates a level 4 question from a level 5 question. I alluded to this a little bit when I was talking about how they might put 5 tricks in a level 5 question, and you have to avoid all 5 tricks in order to solve that question correctly. And so it involves kind of dissecting the exam more and more to the point where you might even want to write, for example, write your own logic game from scratch. That's totally valid, no mistakes. Show it to others. You could post it in the group as well and see if it's totally valid and what goes into constructing it. What types of inferences do you need students to make? And how could you lead someone down an incorrect line of reasoning without them realizing it?
Gotcha.
I've had a few discussions with a former writer of actual LSAT questions. They're on the YouTube channel and on the podcast, and I'd recommend listening to those or watching those to get some of his insights as well, because there's nothing like hearing it straight from the horse's mouth.
I'll check it out. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Dev. It's been great connecting with you.
Thank you. I hope to come to one of your seminars and actually meet you in person, and go from there as well as I continue. Thank you so much for everything you do, like all your free videos and all the resources you put out there. It's another way of me thinking, and I do listen to a lot of things you put out there. So thank you so much for everything.
Awesome, Dev. My pleasure. Glad it's been helpful to you. Keep in touch.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Bye.